Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Xony, and today we're going to have some more stories from Reddit. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further, let's go. Now let's get into today's stories to find out what happened. I, 34 male, and my wife, 30 female, met at a wedding for a mutual friend. She was one of the bridesmaids and I couldn't take my eyes off of her throughout the ceremony. During the reception, I asked her to dance and we connected. We exchanged information and scheduled our first date with each other for the following weekend. The time we got to spend together was amazing, and I'm confident in saying that I fell in love with her right then. We dated for a year and a half before we got married. It was somewhat of a whirlwind romance and we didn't want to wait much longer. Some of our family and friends thought that it might have been a little too soon, but they knew how passionate we felt about each other. When we first started dating, I had an amazing job. I made twice what my wife made every year with a little more to spare. We had some long conversations after we were married and we decided it would be best for her to quit her job. She had wanted to focus on building a business of her own anyway, so we thought it would be good for her to do that while I continued working. During the early years of our marriage, we had a lot of conversations about starting a family. It was something that I wanted to do down the line, but I wanted to spend a few years with just my wife. I wanted to travel and explore the world in my free time, and having a child was going to make that difficult. I was under the assumption that she had an IUD and things were being taken care of on her end to avoid pregnancy, so I was very surprised when she was waiting for me at home one evening to tell me that she was pregnant. I didn't know how it happened, and she explained to me that it's possible that an IUD isn't 100% effective. I didn't know how any of that worked at the time, so I didn't question it. It took me by surprise, and my reaction wasn't exactly what my wife was hoping for, so she was hurt that I wasn't immediately excited about it all. I assured her that I was excited about having the baby, but it was just a lot sooner than I thought it would be. Everything with the pregnancy went well and my wife gave birth to a very healthy baby girl. And our lives have been completely different ever since. I love my daughter more than anything in the world, and I would burn down an entire city for her if I needed to. That being said, my wife had a funny way of reminding me how I reacted when I found out about the pregnancy. After our daughter was born, my wife put her business on the back burner to take care of her. I understood doing that for a little while, but I had personally invested a lot of money in the business she wanted to start. I was encouraging her to get back at it because I didn't want to lose all the money that I put into it. She was frustrated with me for suggesting that. She saw herself as a full-time mother, and the business was no longer a concern of hers. I was able to sway her to focus on it while she took care of our daughter. Don't get me wrong, I understood where she was coming from, but she had been very adamant about me sinking through thousands of dollars into her business before she got pregnant. Wasting all of that was not an option. For the first 3 years of our daughter's life, everything was going well with us. My wife was running her business, and it wasn't the most successful, but she was earning a modest income from it. Everything had been going very well with my job, and we were even thinking about buying a vacation house. Everything completely changed when I was unexpectedly laid off from my job. The company was going bankrupt, and they were making massive cuts. We had a decent amount of savings, and I was able to liquidate some other assets so we could live comfortably for a while I looked for another job. But there was a time when we were relying on my wife's business to make money. She didn't like that at all. She was angry with me for getting laid off. I could tell that she thought I wasn't working hard enough or giving enough to the job, and that made me the reason we were going through the troubles we were. She seemed to care less about me when I wasn't bringing in all of the money for the household. While I was unemployed and looking for a new job, I started to notice some changes with my wife. I was home all of the time, and she couldn't seem to get away from me fast enough. It seemed like the idea of sleeping with me made her angry, and she was dressing up a lot more than she normally did just to run errands like going to the grocery store. I thought she was acting strangely. But I figured it was just the stress of adjusting to everything we had gone through. One day, she told me that she was invited to grab drinks with one of her girlfriends and was going. I said goodbye to her that evening, and she came home drunk around midnight. I asked her about the time she had, but she wasn't interested in sharing too much. She was drunk and laughing, telling me it was a secret. I thought she was just being silly, and would tell me the next day. When I asked her over breakfast, she said she hardly remembered. I didn't remember her being blackout drunk, so I thought that was odd. It was an excuse to avoid talking about it. I started to worry that something might be going on when she was going out more often with her friends. I assumed she was doing it to get away from the stress of things at home with me there. I never thought she'd be cheating. One night while she was out, I was putting her daughter to bed and I felt that she had a slight fever. I knew the basics about what to do, but I didn't know where any child Motrin or anything like that was. So, I called my wife to see if she could help me. I called her several times and texted her and she never answered. I understood that she was out with her friends and might not have been looking at her phone, but it seemed irresponsible. If there was an emergency or anything like that, I expected her to answer the phone. She came back later that night and immediately went to check on her daughter because she felt bad for not being there. She was a little bit drunk by trying to have a conversation with her about what was going on anyway. I aired all of my concerns about her not answering her phone and going out with her friends more often. She told me that it was unfair that I wanted her to just stay home and take care of the kid. She was framing it as me forcing an exclusively domestic lifestyle on her when I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain. We got into a huge argument about all of that and she basically told me that she was upset that I lost my job. Neither of us spoke to the other for a couple of days as we tried to get over what was said during the fight. During those days, she was getting a lot of phone calls that she would take away from me. I was curious about them, so I stood on the other end of a door and eavesdropped. She was whispering on the phone and explained to someone that she couldn't leave because her daughter was sick. But she told them that she missed them and couldn't wait to see them again in a few days. That wasn't how she spoke to her friends. It wasn't a platonic phone call at all. I pretended like I didn't hear what happened and I went through her phone later that night. I saw that she had a text message exchange with a guy that she went to college with. He always had a crush on her, but she didn't reciprocate it. The guy was a highly sought-after lawyer in our area and married. That didn't seem to matter to either of them because they were having an affair from what I saw in the messages. They were sending each other nude pictures and explicit messages and scheduling times to be together. I noticed from the meeting times they said that they were all during the nights when my wife was supposedly out with her friends. The interesting part of their messages was how they all started. Days after I lost my job, she sent him a message asking if he knew of a good divorce attorney. He asked if everything was all right with us and wanted to help her if he could. She told him that our marriage wasn't working out and she wanted to get out before things got messy. I had no idea what she meant by that. Up until I lost my job, everything had been going great with us. I had never heard her. I hardly even raised my voice at her, so saying she was worried things would get messy was strange. From there, they started talking about their past, and that she always had a thing for him. Whenever she would talk to me about him, she mentioned how pathetic his crush on her was. She made it seem like she thought she was so much better than him, and wouldn't even consider being with him. Now she's telling him that she's always had a thing for him. I felt like a fool for believing what she told me. The relationship had been diminishing before my eyes, and I was too eager to ignore the signs. Seeing how her affair started after I lost my job put a lot of things in perspective for me. When we met, she was working and had a decent job, so I never assumed that she could have been with me for the money and stability that I offered. But in hindsight, she was very quick to leave her job and convinced me she was going to run a business that she practically abandoned. I gathered as much evidence off of her phone as I could and I sent it all to myself so I could give it to my divorce attorney. If she thought for 1 second she was going to be divorcing me and taking half of my assets, she had another thing coming. On top of divorcing her, I wanted to get back at her for what she did. It was clear to me that she had been using me throughout the entirety of our marriage, and I was angry. I took a little while to think about what I wanted to do, and I came up with an idea. I called the lawyer that she was having an affair with, and I had a conversation with him about wanting to sue my former employer for wrongful termination. I made it seem like there was going to be a big case that he was going to be unable to refuse. He and I were somewhat acquaintances, so I told him to bring his wife over to our house and we would have lunch together, all four of us. He tried to get out of it, but I insisted. Before we had our lunch meeting, I had a conversation with my wife about him coming over. I joked around with her about what she said about the lawyer in the past. She started talking about how he was in college and the weird things he was doing, all while I was recording her. She said she thought he was pathetic and didn't understand how he landed someone like his wife. It was all just very mean. The day of our lunch meeting finally came and we all sat around on my back patio and got to talking. I casually mentioned that my wife mentioned she went to school with the lawyer. They both started talking about it fondly and reminiscing. I corrected my wife and told her that wasn't what she told me earlier. I pulled out my phone and played a recording of her calling him pathetic and an embarrassing loser. The lawyer was obviously very offended by it. Then I told him that I bet he wished he knew how she really felt before they had an affair. That caught everybody off guard and both of them tried to deny it. I told them there was no point in denying it and I knew everything. I also told them that I was in contact with a divorce attorney and I would be making sure my wife didn't get a thing from me. The lawyer and his wife got into an argument, and she ended up leaving by herself. My wife didn't think about coming to me to clarify what was happening. Instead, she went to the lawyer and tried to explain why she said the things that she did. He clearly didn't believe her either. He must have had some inkling of how she felt at the time, and hearing her say it finally confirmed it. I butted my head in, and I explained to him that she was only really with me for the money, so when I lost my job, she was probably jumping over to him so she wouldn't have to work for anything. Part of me felt bad for him because I knew that she was manipulating him. But he knowingly slept with a married woman, so he deserved whatever was going to happen to him after. I kicked my wife out of the house that night, and she begged me not to because she said she didn't have anywhere else to go. She fought very hard to get a portion of my assets. It was very clear that she had one thing in mind during all of it, and that was money. In the end, she didn't get anything for me. Not long after our divorce, I actually found an incredible job as well. If she had just stuck it out for a few months, none of that would have happened, and she would have been more comfortable than she ever was. Instead, she had to be selfish and greedy and ended up losing everything in the end.